Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Reji, for introducing all of us. On behalf of all of you, welcome the panelists, and on behalf of the panelists, I welcome all of you to this, what promises to be an interesting session. In fact, I live about 10 or 11 kilometers away from this venue, and it has taken me 70 minutes to reach. So obviously the roads of Delhi are not smart, at least today. And I was thinking that in the context of the topic that we are all discussing today, this is essentially what a smart network is meant to do. It should keep people moving. It should enable transportation of what we want to send from one place to another without major interruption, smooth, without losses, efficiently. Now, if you look at electricity, for example, I was the other day reading a book on smart power, and I came across this story. I don't know whether it is true. It said that when Michael Faraday was conducting several of his experiments, the Chancellor of the Exchequer at that time, I think it was Mr. Gladstone, he visited his laboratory and he said, "What is it that you're experimenting on?" Obviously, he's talking about electricity. Will it have any relevance in the future? So he said, "I doubt whether it will have any relevance." And then the other part of the story is, which is another version. He says, perhaps it will be something which you can tax. And later Gladstone went on to become the Prime Minister. But I think probably if what Michael Faraday said, that it is not of major consequence to the world in future, he was either understating the importance of what he was doing, because the way electricity has become seminal to our existence today, I think you could hardly think of a society, a modern society, any economy which can do without electricity. It has brought out so many resources which can be harnessed to the benefit of society. It has enabled so many technologies to be developed which hitherto were not known of. So it is, I think, pointless for me to talk about the importance of electricity. But the importance of electricity as far as India is concerned, I would like to underline from 2 points of view. One is that the generation capacity which India possesses today, which is close to 210 gigawatts, it has seen a major leap in the last 2 decades, ever since the era of liberalization was started. However, as far as accessibility is concerned, we still have major issues, and we have a substantial part of our population which is not drawing electricity, or which is not connected with the grid, or which has no other source of generating electricity. This is one part of the picture. The other part of the picture is that wherever electricity is being made available, the infrastructure which is in place, it calls for a lot of improvement. There are huge distribution losses in many areas, although this has improved over last few years, but still there is major scope for system upgradation, major scope for strengthening the system. And it is in this context that the smart grid that we are talking about becomes important. Because if we were to utilize this technology for reducing your aggregate technical and commercial losses, then it would bring in so much more electricity revenue to the distribution licensees, which now they are not able to collect. The other side of the smart grid, which I think becomes extremely important, is that in the desire to find new sources of meeting the energy requirements. And in the desire to mitigate the impact that electricity generation from conventional sources has on the environment, the smart grid technology becomes extremely relevant. For example, the integration of the renewable energy that India is pursuing. 20,000 megawatts or between 20 and 25,000 megawatts is the capacity that we have for generating electricity from renewable sources. In the 12th plan, which has just started, kicked off, we intend to add another 30,000 megawatts. And the integration of this through the national grid or to the national grid is extremely important. And I'm sure that the smart grid technology will enable that to happen. Now, we are still at an experimental stage, if I may use that term, and we are looking for technologies which are affordable and which are reliable. Whenever we discuss smart grid technology with the distribution companies or the transmission companies, I think the high end of transmission, there are not too many issues. But in terms of the distribution network, 33 kV and below, and the last mile infrastructure linkage with the consumers, the reliability question becomes extremely important, and it has assumed importance because the distribution licensees, most of them who are in the public sector, they are not financially in a very sound position. So their risk-taking ability in investing in their capital, scarce capital, in infrastructure has to be that much more cautious and judicious. So unless there are technologies which are affordable and which are reliable, which can demonstrate what they claim efficiently, I think the distribution companies will fight shy of adopting these technologies. It is in this regard that Government of India has launched this major initiative, public-private partnership, as well as the task force which has been set up. Now, and one of the areas on which this task force is working is creation of efficient meters which are affordable. Because if you ask all the consumers to replace their meters, and if they cost 5,000–6,000 rupees, I'm sure you will not find too many consumers who are willing to replace their meters. Because what you are saying these smart meters will do is to record every last unit of energy which is consumed by them. So why should the consumer be interested? If he is getting away by using some obsolete technology which is not logging all the energy he consumes, then he is fine with it. It's your problem. It's a problem of the system or the distribution licensees. And the distribution licensees themselves, if they were to bear the cost of replacing all these meters, then, as I said, there is a problem of capital which they have. Now, I thought that in this context, the session that we have planned today becomes very significant, because we are looking at how to do things, what has been done elsewhere in the world, what is the roadmap for the future, how can smart grid technology be rolled out in India. And I'm very pleased the panel has already been introduced, and I would suggest that we begin by Mr. Hiroshi. He will make his presentation, followed by Mr. Russell. And thereafter, in the meanwhile, if we have the panelists who join us, of course, our distinguished panelist from Germany, Dr. Egon, is here. He would be making his presentation. I would suggest, for the paucity of time, if we could restrict the presentation to, say, about 10 to 15 minutes, and then leave some space for interaction that would make the session more fruitful.